I've been coming to this farm all my life. This patch of ground has been in my family for over 140 years. My great-great-grandfather farmed here. My great-grandfather farmed here. Grandpa farmed here. Uncle Trevor farmed here. Pilgrimages to the farm were a normal part of growing up for me. This family ritual is full of happy memories. Endless walks across the countryside, watching the cows being milked, walking down Grandpa's grape-covered walkway towards his back veranda. My dad grew up on the farm. His neighbours were his cousins. He left to become a school teacher. But you never really leave this land. It keeps calling you back. It's also a place of tragedy. Not far from the main house lies Grandpa's brother, who during a time of high infant mortality passed away 4 days after his birth. We were always told to stay away from the dams. It wasn't just because I wasn't a great swimmer. We were warned about how dangerous the dams were. A mother in the family had gone into one years ago trying to rescue her daughter, but both of them ended up drowning. As I grew older, the details of this story changed. My grandpa told Dad this story. He had been working when he heard a gunshot from his brother's place next door. He knew George had gone to the markets that day to sell vegetables, so he went across to make sure everything was okay. He met Clary, who was looking for his son, Robert. The pair found him around the back. He had shot himself. Clary told Grandpa he didn't think Robert would do it. Earlier that day, Robert had come to the house and demanded Edith have sex with him. When she refused, he threatened to throw Heather, an 11-month-old girl, into one of the dams. Still, Edith refused. So Robert grabbed the child and ran out the door. He threw her into the dam. Even though Edith couldn't swim, she went in to rescue her daughter. Robert had been a farmhand until a few days before. He'd gotten upset and threatened to shoot George. After losing his job, Robert began spreading rumours that he and Edith were having an affair. There was a coroner's inquest into the deaths. The inquest heard from the police, from Edith's husband George, from Robert's father and sister. The inquest heard about Robert's threat to kill George. Robert's sister testified that he was making statements about if he died that day around the breakfast table that morning, and they heard about the rumours of a relationship. The inquest determined that Edith was so upset by the rumours circulating that she drowned Heather in the dam before drowning herself. Robert saw the bodies in the dam and instead of going for help, returned to the house and killed himself. I don't understand the inquest decision. I've wrestled with it, but I just can't understand it. I'm not surprised Robert wasn't held responsible. Who could prove this? But with death threats and talk of dying that day? Come on. And to pin it on Edith's psychological state without an expert opinion, that just sounds dodgy. No one will ever truly know what happened that day in 1938. Those who did died that day. Future historians may stumble upon the coroner's report. They'll read about a mother who was so depressed her husband was willing to leave for the day without asking his neighbour, his brother and sister-in-law, to drop in. They'll read about a mother so desperate for children after miscarriages, she was willing to murder her baby and commit suicide. And they'll read about the farmhand who made death threats and talked about dying that morning, who also committed suicide, apparently from sorrow. But family stories are important. People have always been storytellers. Our stories shape us. They help us understand the world, bring comfort during the hardest time. Maybe there's nothing more to this than a family story, but I doubt it. It has a ring of truth to it. My mum's father spent most of his life in the town about 20 kilometres away. He became an orphan at 15, a few weeks before the deaths at Hilldale. With World War II started, he enlisted in the army before returning to the area years later. Mum's dad suffered from dementia in his final years. He struggled recognising me, but would tell me in perfect detail about his old horses and his dogs. He would tell me about my mum when she was little. One day, I was driving Nan and Pa to my parents' house. He'd been telling me stories from his younger years. At one point, he said to me, "It was just up there where that fellow killed himself after throwing that baby and its mum drowning in your father's family." Pa was wrong about the location, but he still said it. Here was someone who had no direct connection to the incident, who had just lost both of his parents, who returned to the area years later, but he knew about it. The story that he believed was the same one I heard from my dad. That's why this story is so important. It didn't just give my family comfort or strength or create a bond with the land. It was the one that could be believed in the local region. The story of Edith Eyb, the heroic mother who died trying to save her child from a dam, will be lost if it ceases to be told, leaving only an implausible, murderous mother in her place. Some stories just shouldn't be silenced.